All right, well, good morning. Welcome back. Start turning to Exodus chapter 20 once again this morning. And here's your friendly reminder to start thawing your turkey today if you haven't started doing that yet. That's usually how long it takes depending on size of turkey, but just so thankful as we reflect on our Thanksgiving. And hopefully you will do some of that this week as well. Some of you are just thankful the Bobcats won yesterday. So good game to watch. I didn't get as much as, it's too early, I guess. Too early to get much of a rise out of anybody.
Go Cats.
There we go. Exodus chapter 20, before we start fighting one another. We're going to look again this morning and deal with the 6 in the 10 that relate to the horizontal, right? Our relationship with others. And as we're starting to think about our relationships, I think it's only by God's grace, or really even by His discipline, that the best of us and even the worst of us is reflected in and through with other people, right? The best of us and sometimes the worst of us, right, can be reflected in others, in our relationships. There's all kinds of examples. You know, I was in Texas a few weeks ago, and while I was on stage at their church, I used the term y'all. I still kind of use that here a little bit, right? When you're in Texas, you got to use the term y'all around them. You start sounding like a Texan. Or have you ever noticed that sometimes the people you hang around is how you start dressing? Right? You look similar to some of the people that you are constantly with, right? But just thinking along these lines, I want to take it to the next level, and really the best example of this is your kids, right? Anybody have kids? And again, the best of you or the worst of you is reflected in your kids. Right? A few weeks ago, I've told some of you this story. A few weeks ago, I was kind of playing with Harper in the living room, and I had something. I love to kind of play the hide the thing game, and I make him think it disappeared and throw it across the room. And I was playing with Harper, and she was really getting kind of frustrated with me. Right? She was getting upset with me, and you know how vibrantly Harper likes to live. If you've been around here, right? She's an expressive little girl. So I'm playing this game. She's getting more and more frustrated, and right in the middle of playing this game, she throws her hands down and she says, "I'm done with this," and she walked out. Right? I'm like, little 3-year-old. How did she know to even respond that way? And then I looked over at Courtney. I said, "She learned that from you." And she looked right back at me and she said, "She learned that from you," right? Again, parents, be careful what you do and say around your kids, but relationships sometimes reflect, again, the best in us and sometimes the worst in us. And as we're starting to look at this, we're looking at relationships, and we're also reminded that the law is powerful to reveal where we need His redemption the most in our lives. So like our kids or like our relationships, this law can often reflect to us the things that we need to work on in our own lives. Just to sum this up, looking at our relationships this morning, we reveal just how sanctifying they can be, right? The law plays a role in that sanctification. These 10 play a role in that sanctification. Right? And again, though we aren't under the law, remember the law is framed in grace. Though we aren't under the law like we used to be, we should still want to please God by doing what He asks us to do. He commands us in these 10 commandments, right? So here's where I'm going with this. The golden rule, right, is kind of what we're talking about. And the golden rule to treat others how you want to be treated depends on what went before that. The part about relationships today depends on what went before this in the first 4 about our relationship to God as our Father who loves us and who answers our prayers and gives us good things when we ask Him of being His people. That's what the first 4 are about. And just from a few weeks ago, as Daniel had pointed out, the whole book, the whole law and the prophets, the whole history of redemption and all of God's plans kind of hang on these 2 great commands, right? Love God and love others. That He be loved by us as his people, and that his people love each other. So this morning, the theme that I want us to get after is that fullness in life comes from giving God our lives by honoring the life he has given others. And these next 6 are going to show us that. So we're going to start at an appropriate spot, chapter 20, picking up in verse 12. Exodus chapter 20, verse 12. Hopefully you are there. And a number of these are going to be fairly simple this morning, or seemingly simple because they're short. But chapter 20, verse 12. We'll start with this one. Honor your father and your mother so that you may live long in the land the Lord your God is giving you. Do we need to pause right here and bring the elementary kiddos out? Maybe even the preschool kids, right? Right? They're the ones that need to be in here. Right? Honor your father and mother. And we read that, we start to wonder, how did we get here from the Sabbath one? Right? We might even ask the question, why is this one in the top 10? If these are so pivotal, why is this in here? Right? It seems so low or simple. But this is such a good one for the first of the horizontal, because it kind of is a go-between between God the Father and who he is, and then our relationships with others. And really it does 2 big things for us. Number 1, look at that verse again. It starts with the word honor. It brings in this idea of honor. If you're wondering, honor is to respect, to esteem. I really like the word value or even treasure. Right? That's where this starts. Honor. And it says we do that, we should do that for our fathers and mothers as they are gifts from God. In fact, what I'm getting after, how these are connected, if you treasure God, then you'll treasure the life that he has given you, and you will treasure the life that he's given others, even as much as you treasure your own life, right? In other words, what I'm saying is you did not get here alone. You didn't get here on your own. You came from somebody. And so it begins with honor. And then the second thing, the big thing that comes off of this verse 12, it comes with a promise, right? The only commandment with a promise. It tells us right here, almost the theme of where we're going with all of this. The fullness of life is found in obeying this. It'll be a blessing to you when you honor your father and mother. Right? My parents really loved to hold that one over my head when I was growing up. Right? There's fullness in obedience to these things. It's the path to life we'll see in other parts of Scripture. So just keeping us moving this morning, here's where this promise starts to come in this morning, and what we're looking at in our theme. Our first point is that fullness in life is found when we see God's love in his authority, because this parenthood, this honor is about his authority. And so we begin to see his fullness when we see God's love in his authority. So to say it another way, we should honor God's authority that we first find in our parents. Right? And I know sometimes this is a struggle for us. First, because we don't really like authority. And Scripture's pretty clear about authority in other places. We're supposed to honor other authority, but just about any authority we come across is first shown in the authority in our parents. And we struggle with this. This is so hard because, like most things, we have a tendency to mess up the best things. Right? What can be good authority can be messed up fairly easily. It's often seen, again, as a bad thing. And I do want to be clear that sometimes parents do things that might not be worthy. They might abuse their authority. Far be it from us, even some of our parents, that some of us that are parents aren't abusing our authority. We all know how sin can taint relationships. But I want to go to the principle right here. See God's overflow of love on how he has set things up in relationships in the family. In fact, I would just say you can look at all the 10 instead of saying these are God's bully things that he just holds us down with. See them as an outflowing of his love, but especially this one. See the outflowing of love in the authority that he's building right here, that he's setting up right here in relationships in the family. Ideally, parents are given that role from from God's authority handed down. The parents get their authority from God, but also the mere fact that someone is a parent is an outpouring of love. Right? Now follow me with this. New life comes from the close, intimate love between a husband and a wife because life began from the intense love within God. Follow me with what I'm saying here. Right? I don't have to get too far into the details, but there's a certain way kids come about. There's a certain way a family is grown. And it comes out of an abundance, right? The overflow of the love between two people. And really, this is a picture of God's love, the outflowing of himself, the overabundance of himself. I want to be clear about what I'm saying. God did not make us because of some deficiency in himself. We have to be careful we don't think that way. Like somehow he needed us, and that's why he created us. No, he created us because he was so good and so loving that an outflow of that love was this creation. So, parents, families, should be an intense reminder of the fullness of God, of that love. Again, like God could have made the whole fruitful and multiply thing, that command, like just a chore or a necessary evil, but amen, it is not. It's a good thing. And he's given that to us. Right? And children, again, are a result of the overflow of two people loving each other. And again, I know how we can mess this up all the time, how our society can mess this up. But just to think about it, the created order, the authority in someone's parents, the call to honor them, again, isn't just meant to be this crushing or hindering thing, but God's good intentions are ultimately revealed in the creation of the family. He's showing us that love. And it shows in his authority that he gives to our parents. So as we think about this and apply it just a little bit, I know family is hard. In fact, you're probably about to spend some time with family this week, I'm sure. But family can be hard. And as you know, the family, especially our kiddos, they don't come with an instruction booklet, right? Like really, let's be honest, there's two types of people, right? There's two types of people that come to instructions. Like I don't know if you've put something together recently, but there's one type of person that doesn't read them and just throws them away right away, right? You could be thinking, I'm that type of person. And then the other type of person is the person that uses them and reads through them and then puts it together and then maybe reads through them again just to make sure and then puts them in a drawer somewhere with all the other instruction booklets, right? Some of you are like, that's me. I've got all the manuals from all the things, right? This is an extra sermon right here. All those instructions are online in PDF form if you really need to go find them somewhere. So clear out that drawer this week. But we come to instructions in those two ways. And it would be easier if our kids, if our family just had an instruction booklet. Like, here's the points. Do this, do this, do this. Don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, right? It would be so much easier, right? Families, parenting, being someone's kid, again, doesn't have these clear directives on just here's how to be a parent, except for this, right? Honor your mother and father. And I know families aren't perfect. Parents aren't perfect. Let's be real. You and I, as someone's kid, we aren't perfect either. And so kind of getting this started, that's why we need God's redemptive plan to bring families back. That's why we need the work of a gracious gospel to redeem where we mess up in our families. Coming again with this law that is just embraced with grace. It's telling us right here how to approach our families as we're trying to honor our mother and our father and following through with what God wants from our families. We need his grace. We need his gospel. And I will just take this to the bottom line, simple factor here, right? Again, the gospel must be central, nothing else in our families, and we need to chase after that. But just practically, kids, maybe even some adult kids, it's always your place to honor your parents. It's always your place to respect your parents. Even if you don't agree with them. Even if they're not the best parent, you still can honor and respect them. So we can move forward in that this week in thinking about the way that we love our parents in that way, especially as we may deal with them coming into the holidays. But moving on, I think to honor God's authority means we should have a sincere affection for other people, right? That flows from the honor, right? To begin to value, to honor the life that God has given to others as much as he's given us our own. And that's where we begin to see just the next several commandments. And really the next couple of commandments are really short. They're short, hopefully in your version you can see how short they are. But actually in the original Hebrew, they're just 2 words each, right? So we should all brush up on our Hebrew and learn it in the Hebrew, right? But verse 13, we'll read through all of these and come back and pull them apart a little bit. You shall not murder. 14, you shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife or his manservant or his maidservant, his ox or his donkey or anything that belongs to your neighbor. Now, again, some of these seem obvious. On surface level, it seems really easy to do these, right? And if you're anything like me, you start going down the list. You're like, okay, I'm good on that one. I'm good on that one. I'm good on that one. And we feel like we're good to go. But I would just caution us that maybe sometimes we're not as good to go as we think. In fact, some of these run much deeper. And we kind of consider them in some ways together. But first, we'll start with that next one, right? You shall not murder in verse 13, right? To murder is to selfishly take life when death doesn't belong, right? It's to take that in the wrong way. I want to be clear. Some of the old translations got the word wrong, and it just says, thou shalt not kill. It's actually, thou shalt not murder. So there's some things within that are permissible within the command, right? Thankfully, right? So it's this selfishly taking of life. So it doesn't include things like self-defense or just warfare or capital punishment. I'll stand in to be the first one to say it doesn't include hunting, amen? Right? But it's this selfish, acting like God and taking somebody's life. Murder, right? And again, as we start to think about this and you start to think, well, I'm kind of good to go, right? Like this isn't a concern for me. We all know that in Matthew 5, Jesus ratchets this up. Just listen to his words. Matthew 5:21, you have heard that it was said to our ancestors, do not murder, and whoever murders will be subject to judgment. And this is where it really hits heavy. I tell you, everyone who is angry with his brother or sister. Ouch. I don't know if all of us can stand up and say the same thing about murder in general as we could about anger. Anyone who's angry with his brother or sister will be subject to judgment. Right? I'll kind of let that simmer, but perhaps this idea of murder hits closer to our hearts than we think. Or take, for example, the next one, right? Verse 14, you shall not commit adultery, right? This is taking sex, the most intimate human behavior outside of God's arrangement, and it dishonors the spouse, it insults the Creator who has instituted that marriage, right? We can even go back to the honor your mother and father one. It's part of the structure of family and the way that God has instituted authority, and he has built that into there, right? So he goes on to this next one, right? Do not commit adultery. And again, it's taking a gift, a blessing meant for someone else and not for you. And it cuts against that honor in family. And so just to kind of sum up the whole thing, sex is not just procreation. This is what the world tells us, but sex is not just procreation. It's not just preference, and it's not just pleasure, right? It is for God and by God. Right? Jesus takes this one to the next step too, and he says, even if our eye causes us to stumble, we break this commandment. And again, moving rather quickly because we're kind of going somewhere with these, look at number 8 in verse 15. Commandment number 8 says, you shall not steal. Stealing can take a lot of different forms. Right? All of us remember the day when we were like 5 years old and lifted the candy bar on accident when mommy said we couldn't have it, right? It's so much more than that. It is taking things from someone else, but it can also be embezzlement, right? It can be leveraging that which has been entrusted to us. It can be extortion, using your power wrongly. We even have to check our heart when we play finders, keepers, losers, weepers. We need to make a good effort to return something when we find it. What about this? Not following through with an IOU, not paying your loans, right? Being honest when improperly charged at the store. If you came out of the grocery store and they had forgotten to ring something up, right? Will you go back and pay for that, or will you just take it home? Right? What about work ethic? That's partly stealing, because we're supposed to work hard and honor our boss with how we work. Kind of goes back to that honor. What about everybody's favorite one? We can't cheat on our taxes. I know we hate them. I'm the first one to stand up and say, I don't like taxes. Scripture tells us we're supposed to pay them. If we don't pay them, we're stealing. It's close to home, right? I think it's right here kind of a good place to begin to nail down the second point this morning from these next handful, right? And our second point is that fullness in life is found when we don't take the blessings God has intended for someone else, right? When we don't take the blessings that God means for someone else for our own good or benefit. Or to say it on the other side, we need to build and steward with what God has blessed us with, not with what He's blessed someone else with. And too often we're trying to build with what He's given someone else, or trying to take what someone else is building with. So here's the first of the face value of this. Right? We teach all of our kids this, right? Don't take something that doesn't belong to you. That part's fairly simple, right? Don't take someone else's stuff. But I want us to also see it this way. God has more at stake in your life than you do. And in a way, your life, this is where the grace, the blessing, like the life is here, right? God has invested in your life, and He's at work giving you the things that He knows you need. And so, in a way, everything in your life, this is great for Thanksgiving, right? It's already God's. Scripture says He owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. And you don't have anything that you have right now that doesn't come from God and from His blessing, from His grace. So steward everything and own nothing. That sounds radical. Steward everything and own nothing. See God's tremendous investment in your life. That means take care of what He's given you and bring it back for His glory and give it back to His goodness and who He is. And don't assume that any of it is just guaranteed to you. Steward it all. So just think of the three areas that we're tempted to take. Kind of summing up a few of these right here. Number one, we're tempted to take life. We should always be about building life, of giving life, of not taking it. And we can even combine some of these in the whole anger thing. Your words and even how you interact with people can take life. Can pull away from people. So life, wife, you could also put husband here, right? You should put husband if you're a gal. Do things within God's boundaries, right? With the way that He builds things, the way that He blesses things. That's where that fullness is. And He's saying outside of the boundaries, it's messy. It actually tears apart. It goes against that honor that we're supposed to give to so many things that God has given us. But number three, it's the things, it's stuff. Again, great week to think through this. And I'll just say it again. Good things that become God things are bad things. You can't turn your stuff into an idol. And I want to be clear, we often do this not intentionally. We often do this by default, kind of by accident, when we give too much time and energy to the things that aren't God, right? But taking it to a deeper level, I also want us to see it this way. Talking about especially not taking from other people. Other people's lives are precious to God too, right? He's invested in their lives as well, right? The way he's given them life, but also the things he's decided to bless them with. So think of this personally. Here's where our stuff and our blessings meet others. We should live with margin so that we don't have to take from others, so we don't have to steal, but instead, because of our margin, we can give out of our abundance, right? It's a sincere affection for others. We should live in such a way that we can be generous because we have that margin. Because of what God's blessing us with, what he's building in our lives, what he's given us, we can turn around and give to others. Now from here we got to keep moving on to the last two, but they still deal with relationships, right? And they move more into the condition of our hearts. And I want to be clear, it's funny as we just continue to move down these, right? They seem to be the smallest. And I want to remind you as we think about that, none of these are just too small or really don't belong. In fact, God's saying because they're in the 10, they're weighty. Right? They're important to all of this. All of the story of redemption, all of the law and the prophets. So these two seem the smallest, but they have to do more with our unseen hearts. And if our heart isn't satisfied where it is and even doesn't celebrate God's goodness to someone else, then we will never find fullness or satisfaction in where God has us. So look at the 9th commandment, verse 16. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. This is lying. You can't maliciously take the truth from other people, right? Still taking. Did you know that researchers say that 91% of us lie regularly? Another 9% are lying. No, I don't. 91% of us lie regularly. I know it hits close to my heart from time to time, right? And this includes things like rumors or gossip, even flattery, right? We can encourage people, but we have to be careful we don't just lie to them and give them a false sense in this flattery, right? Again, your words can either speak life or they can tear down. And lies and deceit cannot be common tools in the life of a godly person. And lying often exists to take advantage of others, right? It's a small tongue issue with massive implications. We should go read the book of James. Have to be careful with lying. Finally, the last one. Look at verse 17. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. This one's a little more than just two words. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife or his manservant, his maidservant, his ox or his donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. Coveting goes beyond merely admiring someone else's stuff. It's a high level of desire. See, when craving something corrupts a good heart and mind, or when the desire is for something that's not yours and you're not supposed to have it, it becomes covetous. But in these two, there's the third and final thing I want us to see this morning, that I want us to take away from this, and it's the idea that fullness in life is found in being satisfied in our blessings and not someone else's, right? Point number 2 is about physically taking someone else's blessings, going to take that from them. This one is about a heart that's not satisfied in our blessings. The attitude, the thought process. The part we don't really show people, like people will generally know if you steal from them. But this one, they might not ever know because it's in our heart. So it's simple and again, so good for this week. We have to be satisfied with what God gives us. We have to find that satisfaction, right? From time to time, we might have the grass is greener syndrome, right? We might have that envy. I like to think of it this way. Anybody else get plate envy? You're like, what is plate envy? Order envy? You ever sit down with friends or family at a restaurant and everybody looks at the menu and you all pick what you want, maybe especially at a new restaurant, and then the waiter, you wait forever, and then the meal comes out and you're all looking at what you got and you're looking at yours and you're looking at what somebody else has got and you're like, I should have got that. You ever said that before? Right? And if you're married, your spouse just takes a little bit of off your plate, right? That's plate envy. I should have got that. I wish I had that. But you're the one that made the decision on what you were going to order, right? And you make a note for the next time you go, right? Plate envy. It's kind of cute and reasonable, I guess, when you're at the restaurant. But when it comes to life, we can't do that. We can't say, here's my plate, here's my blessing, here's what God gave me, and I'm going to just look over here and wish I had what that person had. That's what this is pushing back against. In our heart, that feeling, that thought, that wishing I had somebody else's blessing, right? See, when it comes to comparing what God has given you to what he has given to others, you're never going to be satisfied. You will always have that plate envy in life if you always just want what somebody else has been blessed with. You'll never be happy just wanting what God has decided to give to them. In fact, this is bad because it calls into question what God is doing in your life, his goodness to you, his goodness for you. And really it makes an idol, kind of an unreal expectation for someone else's life or goodness. I just want to be clear what I'm saying right here. When it comes to this greener grass, this plate envy, wishing we had somebody else's life, God is more sovereign than that. Again, I want to tell you that he is more invested in your life than getting it wrong with what he's blessed you with. Again, I know there's ways we can mess that up and get off kilter. But how absurd is it to look at what somebody else has and be like, what God has given me isn't good enough. I want what he's given them. It does come down to our attitude, our hearts. And we tend to be so dismissive. So, here's kind of the solution to all of these. There are a positive, right? Basically, build, don't take. Steward what you have to bless others. Trust, don't covet that which isn't yours. Don't just see these as rules, but see these as a pathway, again, to God's grace. So as you think about it this morning, I'm going to take communion in here in just a moment, but I want us to think about it this way. I want to leave us with this. I'm going to give us an opportunity to respond here in just a minute. But Matthew chapter 16, verse 25, this is really where a lot of this boils down to. It gets so radical that Jesus told us this: "For whoever wants to save his life will lose it." Yeah, that's heavy. Whoever wants to save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life because of me will find it. Now, there's a lot built into that. But right here, thinking about the blessings and our tendency to want to take from somebody else or wish we had somebody else's blessings, he's saying, what I've blessed you with, if you're willing to lose it all for my sake, that's what matters. There is fullness in losing your life to him. There's fullness in losing your life for him. So we count it all. We use it all to his glory, not to our own glory. See, God is sovereign enough to give you and I what we need, when we need it, and how we need it. So trying to do it our own way short circuits that. But number two, what he has given to someone else when taken wrongly will never satisfy us because it's not meant for us. Again, fullness in life comes from giving God our lives by honoring and treasuring the life he has given to others even more than our own. So with that, I want to go to a point of response right where you're at. If you would, just bow your head and close your eyes. Just right there in your seat, we're about to partake in the Lord's Supper. In this morning, so I want you to take a moment. Ben's going to begin to play softly, but a part of taking communion is just reviewing our own hearts before the Lord and kind of looking at the way, thinking about how he's speaking to our hearts. So just as you begin to prepare to partake together this morning, I want you to think about what he might be saying to your heart. Just to give you this moment to respond to him, not to me, not to somebody else, but before the Lord this morning, before we partake, how is he speaking to you this morning? Or even think about it this way, where is he using his word to sanctify you? Show you some things that that he wants to work on? Is it one of these 6? What about all of the 10? So right there, for just a moment, I'm going to give you a second to come before the Lord and just lay your heart before him, just to prepare as we're going to partake. And if you would, just lay at his feet the things that you need to lay at his feet. Just do that business with him. So take that moment, and we'll come back this together.